The old Medina is made of houses, vernacular houses that are called riads, that have a courtyard in the middle, with usually a fountain or a garden, or like ours is smaller, so it just has a courtyard and a series of rooms around it on 2 floors. Sorry?
And good food.
Yeah, usually yes, we eat quite good food. And so I had this opportunity in 2013 to get this house, and at that time I had invited a friend of mine who was living in Tangiers to join and open this house. But at that moment we didn't have any idea of what we were going to do. We just had space and the will to, I think, to share this space with artists from our, I wouldn't say ecosystem, because ecosystem doesn't have a meaning for us at that moment. It was just friends. So we opened the house, we invited friends, we showed their work, we did exhibition without really knowing how to curate exhibition. None of these terms really had a meaning for us. Curating didn't have a meaning, art mediation didn't have a meaning, all this, because I don't come from this background, neither did Hisham at that moment, but we were learning everything. So we were experimenting all the time, new things, and new ways of doing it. But very quickly, I guess, because there was also the context was lacking, maybe it's kind of just very open and free mind spaces that would allow artists to experiment, not especially artists that have a career, but young artists, or artists that don't especially have like art academic backgrounds. So we worked rather on our intuition rather than like curriculum of artists. So I think from word of mouth, people heard about this space, and we got a lot of requests. So we had like a huge list of people willing to connect with us to show their work. So we started to organize a little bit. So the first 3 years, we kind of worked this way, like trying to respond as much as possible, but also to kind of create our own sense of curating and our own like direction, which like basically, yeah, it's still on the process of finding itself, because this is something that we decided recently, that we didn't want to have one specific line or direction, rather than having a set of methodologies and values that we wanted to share. So then in 2015 and then 16, 17, other members joined the space. Francesca Mazorero, Mariam Ben Hayed, Nadira Soumeya, other people that started to build kind of what we can call a collective. We've never thought about ourselves as a collective, but we rather share this space. So we have one space that we all share, where we can all program at different moments. But because we have different languages, we work in different ways, we see things differently, and we are different people coming from different backgrounds. We decided that we're gonna find our own own way of dealing with these complexities, but also about how do we project ourselves in this space. Like individually, how do I project myself at 18? How do Francesca project herself at 18? How do others project themselves? And we didn't have to find a common language, but rather to be respectful and to give enough space so that all these voices can happen in that space. So after a few years, maybe 5-6 years, it became this space where somehow there's so much different voices, different ways of doing things, methodologies, type of programming. So we have, basically it's a cultural space with residencies, exhibitions, talks, screenings, etc.
How many artists are involved?
The core members, we are 6 people, but the broader network is about like 20 people, and there's like a larger ecosystem that it's made. I don't know. It's basically all the ecosystem of independent initiatives in Morocco are connected, and that's also very specific of Morocco. Is that since maybe 10 to 15 years, there was an effort from different people, different artists, but not only artists, different people that started to experiment. And we kind of connected by chance, or because we knew each other from other projects, etc. So there was something that happened at that time, also triggered by different initiatives like the Biennale of Marrakech that used to happen every second year, that stopped in 2018. It was a moment that also was important for the ecosystem in Morocco, because all the artists from the country will gather in Marrakech, but also the ones from the diaspora, also artists from like Western countries would come and connect with us. And those moments were important because it was the moment where we all gathered and were trying to think if there was potential possibilities to work together. Also the context is particular because there's no so much like public funding for this kind of initiatives. Obviously there is a cultural policy and a Ministry of Culture, but it doesn't really recognize or understand our work. So we had to find other ways to sustain ourselves. So out of the kind of precarity, we worked a lot. We managed to find ways to work with other collectives or independent initiatives. Because it was more sustainable for us. For example, one of us could find funding and connect with another initiative or another group of artists, and then everyone could benefit. So it was a way also to try to find the balance in our ecosystem. And I guess just to wrap it up a little bit, I think one of the reasons why we found ourselves here is that I think we were invited also because there's this openness in the way we do things. There's a kind of freedom in the way we do it. We didn't choose, or actually we're always challenging our ways of doing. There's the question of language, which is very important. Morocco is a multicultural country. There is several languages. There is Tamazight. There's different languages in Amazigh, depending on the regions, which is the language of the indigenous people of Morocco. But there's also Arabic, and there's the colonial languages, which is French, and then there's English. So how do we communicate? How do we curate? How do we write? Which language do we choose? All these are different questions that are always brought up and handled, I guess, in our projects. But at the end, we didn't choose. We just decided that each of our members, our invited curators, or people who are involved, we take the responsibility to answer this question, and this gives space for the conversation. Each time we create a new program, it's an opportunity, it's a moment to also challenge all these different things, because we believe that we're not going to solve anything in one way of doing, in one direction, but rather by trying to bring as much as possible those problematics without trying to go around them, that go straight in the problem and practice problem itself. We've been sometimes criticized because we use a lot of French, but again, this also shows the problem of the culture in Morocco, which is an elite culture, and it just shows also a lot of the lack of education in arts. And so I think it was important to us not just to avoid them, but rather to stress them and to try to answer those questions. And so when we were invited at documenta, we were thinking, what are we going to show? Because we're doing so many things in so many different ways that it was so challenging for us to decide what are we going to show in here. Also, we gathered all the members and discussed it a lot. We were not agree, and then we found the common ground, and then we disagree again, and then we were about to put up an exhibition, which was an exhibition talking maybe about the story of that space and about how each of us was involved there, but how also the space is tackling different axes of research and problematics. And so it was kind of a good balance how to represent ourselves. We're going to show what we talk about in this context so that people can understand what le 18 represents in Morocco. But it was kind of fragile position because again, it's a space that rather lives with people. So the most important for le 18 is everything that we do. There are very serious researches and proposals, but at the same time there are very serious excuses to gather people around one question, but also just to gather people, to bring people to be there, to be present, to express themselves and to engage in a conversation. And because this aspect wasn't really present in our proposal, we weren't really satisfied, or let's say we felt that something was missing, and it was heavy also because we thought we're going to put so much energy in trying to bring works from Morocco to Germany that are supposed to speak about themselves, that are completely took out of their context, put here. How do people understand that? Especially that most of our work is very contextualized and work on specific territorialities and communities and are engaged in their own context. So I guess it was also kind of frustration, but also exhaustion at some point, trying to fit within an idea of what documenta is. Because when we were invited, we only saw documenta as a big exhibition. So we felt obliged, or we had to do this exhibition. This is also how we were taught to do art. Our art education is a Western view of education. Even art school in Morocco has been set by the colonizers, or whether French or Spanish. So it's a Western history of art. So how do we tell our story differently, or just take this opportunity to challenge this idea? And so maybe in our space at le 18, we are trying to challenge this by just being there, just bringing people together, reinventing, and bringing this like two identities of ourselves together, the one from our probably ancestors and our own culture, and the one that we learned at schools, at the academies, etc. So at some point, maybe fairly like a month before the opening of documenta, we were hanging out with the group, and And we thought, and if we just cancel this exhibition, that doesn't really make sense for us. We don't really feel that this exhibition represents who we are. We are something. We are, of course, this history through the archives, but we're also more alive than an exhibition. And the very first idea was we want people to understand that we are an ecosystem and we are a community of people. We are a space, but also a community of people. So we decided to cancel the exhibition at the very last minute. We called the art direction, the art directors, and we told them we're going to cancel the exhibition. We're not showing anything, but we're going to bring here us, but also a lot of people from our ecosystem. So we moved part of that budget on flying people here. Most of them are arriving from today till the coming days, and we're going to be here. We're going to be programming different things, having discussions, doing workshops, etc. But I think the most important for us was that this documenta really triggered something, is that it brought us also to go a little bit further in questioning the representation and how do we represent ourselves, not only in another country like Germany, but also in our own country. So I guess we're going back to Morocco with this idea of also challenging ourselves on what we are doing within Morocco. Does it really make sense for the people there, for our communities? Does our forms and our languages understood? And how do we get a little bit closer through this very challenging experience?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Carlos is also part of our collective. He's an architect. He's based in Ceuta, in Ceuta. It's a city that is in the north of Morocco. And he runs different projects in southern Morocco, in the desert. One in southern Morocco, in the oasis that is called Tirmet. He works on the contemporary practices in the Oasian context. But also it's a kind of a laboratory of research for artists and other practitioners who are interested to learn from Oasian life. The Oasian life is still very much alive in Morocco. There's a lot of oases. It's an important part of our, I don't know if we can call that rural life, but yes, it is. People are living out of the oasis, using the same systems as before. And so the project of Carnaval Tirmet exists for 10 years as well. We kind of started at the same
8, 9. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we connected very quickly at that moment. So it's one of the projects that are very close to Le 18, with which we work a lot. A lot of artists that pass by Le 18 go to also Tirmet or the other way around. So we're gonna have a workshop starting tomorrow with Carlos on how to think. Maybe you want to talk about it a little bit.
In fact, people think that the oasis and the life in the desert is something from the past, but as an architect, I have been doing a lot of researches also with my students from Morocco, and realized it's a very contemporary environment. And that when we talk about sustainable development, we should learn about what people do in the desert, in the oasis, but also the nomads. And so we are going to propose people for 5 days to think how applying the same methodology of the attitude people in the desert have, how we can do the same thing but in castles. So there's going to be also René Tribel from the University of Dortmund. It's going to be Iswanto Hartono from Ruan Grupa, who is going to take part in this workshop, and also Marcus and Bash, Leila, and me.
Yeah, so basically I think we want to have a conversation on how also we just learn from different contexts in Morocco and different geographies, and how also it informs different formats of different forms of arts. And during these days, we want to be in conversation with artists, students from Kassel, and to try to understand also the sense of like urbanism, how to engage with the city, how to evolve in the city. It's very particular, like in southern Morocco or in different regions of Morocco. Especially in Western, there is a very specific type of culture, but also urbanism, vernacular urbanism, construction, etc. And I think we want to share this experience and to get into conversation as well to see how we can learn from each other and experiment some things here. This is one thing, but there's a list of public events that are going to take place from the 7th till the 15th. There will be workshops on one of our axes of research that is called Connect, that tackles the poetics and politics of water in Morocco and the region. That became, it started as a program at the district, but it became a collective. And so the collective, it's quite large, part of the collective is gathering here in Kassel, and will also lead a couple of workshops. There will be performances and conversations about orality poetry in the Amazigh culture. So there's two troops of traditional popular musicians that are coming from the Middle Atlas in Morocco, that live in small villages in the Atlas Mountains. And there are a group of artists, of musicians, who are coming to perform, and this is going to be quite for them it's I think it will be the first time that they perform outside of the and for us it's a great pleasure to get a chance to bring them here and share this. And there will be a conversation simultaneously with Leila and Sumaya, who are running this program, to talk about the indigenous culture and the poetry in the Amazigh culture, and how poetry is also, orality and poetry are ways of archiving, telling stories, and also disseminating information in this culture and something. And we have several programs on food. We're going to be cooking for 2 or 3 days, I guess, with different people. So that will be more like a gathering and hanging out, and inviting people to connect and to run conversations and all these programs, you can find them on our social media, Instagram,
Yeah, I took a break. Is it here, like the events mostly?
Mostly. We have another space which is outside.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Because some we use usually for performances, but also conversations. And most of the workshops and conversations we can do that, except two that we are doing in collaboration with Megan.
Yeah.
And I guess at the workshop we're gonna start here, but then probably we're gonna go around in some gardens and stuff.
Thanks so much. Okay.
And so here you find something very important that you can say about us. So we are not presenting nothing. The few things. There's our publication there, which is called Journey, which is a journal. We've been already for. It's also one extension of what we do at Smith, but an extension in publication. We like to collaborate with writers, but also researchers to invite them to write on specific topics. So each issue is on one question. The last edition is on food, actually. And then on each table there's a collection of publications. For example, these publications are just a small selection of young artists or other institutions from our ecosystem. On this first table, on these two tables, it's two publishing houses in Morocco, independent publishing houses. There's Cult Gallery, is a publishing house who focuses mainly on artist books. It's the first one. And the second one, Antouklet, is a publishing house that focuses on journalistic and social writing. So it's mostly a question on climate change, women's work, a lot of different social questions. And on the table over there is some magazines and publications from our schools. And of course, I could only invite you to read the text. I just read it, but you can also find it on social media because it's written as a folk tale. It's one of our members, Nadia Boukmouche, who is a filmmaker and he loves to write. And he gets more and more interested in folk tales. So most of his projects now are inspired and formed by old folk tales in Morocco. So he wrote it. All what happened between us and our conversation, he wrote it as a folk tale, telling the story of those people who get lost and suddenly there's this jinn is a spirit that took our bodies and started to tell us that we had to do this exhibition, etc. So you find the story. But it's really and at the end of the room there's the video room, which is a selection of movies from Morocco and North Africa that are part of like the reference films of North African cinema. And one of them that is showing, it's called A Door to the Sky, gave its name to our exhibition. And it was filmed in the late 80s by a woman filmmaker called Farida Yazid, who is a very important figure in Moroccan cinema because she is one of the first female director. And Door to the Sky tells the story of a Moroccan woman who was living for a few years in France, and then she comes back when her father is dying to her native city, Fez in Morocco. And so it's the whole story of like finding again its place in your own culture, your own identity, and how she turns the house, which is a traditional riad in France, she turns it into a zawiya, into a kind of an open house for people that are seeking somehow some kind of spiritual therapy and yeah, it's a very beautiful film. So we're very much inspired by this film because there's a lot of connection that we find with even very far story, but as well connection between the space as really a place that can heal people. Like physical spaces can have an energy, and by allowing people to come together, can be also a healing space. And the community space, this idea of how a space can also trigger the idea of a community, and how it does create its community by itself. It becomes kind of autonomous at some point, even though we have an idea of what we want to do. But the space, because of its location, and we know that very well in Morocco, because we are in the Medina, but other places are in rural areas, in more fancy areas, in the city center, it doesn't bring the same people. And so that's very important when you know how your context and your like environment and neighborhood functions, you are able also to be more closer to the humanity. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good time. Have a tour.